Welcome back, guys. So
Thanks
if
a
you
lot.
haven't already typed in your responses, go ahead and type it in. The link is going to be shared in the chat. All right. And then again, as yesterday, please keep your cameras on so I can see all of you. Even when I'm talking, I'm looking at your videos so I understand if you have questions or doubts, I can stop at that point. If you are unable to turn on your cameras, again, I would just say, we'll share the link to the YouTube channel and you can watch it from there. All right, guys, in about a couple of minutes, one of the team members will start putting you in the waiting room if you haven't turned on your cameras. With that said, I'm going to start the class today. Are you guys ready? Just type in yes if you guys are ready so we can get going. Awesome. So today is going to be a little bit heavy duty, okay, because I'm going to go into the details of what you need to learn, okay? And by all means, if you need to take screenshots or whatever, do take screenshots. I have no problems with that. You want to take notes, and I want to make sure that your concepts are really clear, okay? And what I'm going to talk to you about is this. I'm going to tell you what you will learn in class and what you have to do at work. Fundamentally, one of the biggest reasons why most people struggle to succeed as designers is they have this theoretical knowledge, but when they get into the work environment, they struggle. They don't know what is going on or why am I not getting promoted? Why am I not getting respect? And one of the most common complaints that you will hear from UX designers is nobody respects design in my company. Okay? The point is, you need to bridge that gap between or bridge that understanding between what you learned in your classroom or and what is expected of you at work. Okay? And we will talk about that. We will also talk about how you should plan to do that. Okay. So that said, let's get on to the next slide. Okay. Let's keep going, guys. Rajiv. Okay. So today we are going to talk about how you should learn and upskill. And again, when I say upskill, it's not just about learning and getting your job. It's also about how do you get promoted within your job? How do you be the person that everybody refers to? Like if you have a question, they come, let's say, let's talk to this person and say hear what this person has to say about it. Okay. So it's about being the center of the game. Okay. How do you become a valuable player as part of your team? That's what we're going to look at. Okay. Let's go on to the next slide. Okay. Um, Again, day three is going to be an invite only event where you have to complete your assignments, you have to turn on your cameras, you have to be present. Okay. And when you do all your requirements, that's when you get put in for day three, and then you will get your certificate after you complete all 3 days. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. Okay. So day one, as you all mentioned, we talked about what do UX designers do, what is the current scenario, what happens when AI comes, what's going to go to my job. You also saw, I gave you a preview of the 80 tasks that we found with companies when we started talking to companies. There were 80 tasks that people needed to execute, and you saw them. And then I also asked you a question. I said, knowing that you have these 80 tasks that to do at work, what is the best way to learn and upskill? Okay. Now, here's the most fun part. Let's go to the next slide. Okay. And these are all the 80 tasks. Let's go on to the next slide. Let's skip this. Can we skip this, Rajiv? And then this was the question I asked you. I said, will you do self-learning? Will you take a boot camp? Okay. So Shiva, if you cannot turn on your camera, I would just say hop on over to the YouTube channel. Okay. So then the second option was boot camp, and the third option was get a degree. Okay. Clearly, each one of them has their own strengths and weaknesses. So which one would you do? Okay. Now the responses are what I found very interesting. Okay. Let's go on to the next one. Okay. The question that was asked was, what was the best way to learn design? And majority of you, right, almost close to 80% of you said that, boot camp, actually about 57% said boot camp as self-learning was best. And then about 30 odd percent said, boot camps. So essentially what I'm hearing is about 80% of you said either boot camps or self-learning. And this was interesting for me because not a lot of you said anything about degrees. Right? Which is great. Now let's go on to the next slide. Okay. Now let's look at how much time do you expect to spend to learn UX. Okay. And what was funny was, or not funny, but like mind-blowing to me was, there's a 46% said 3 months. 3 महीने में मेरे को UX आ जाना चाहिए. Right? Enough that I'll get a job. Right? And 33% said 6 months. I'm going to 3 महीने थोड़ा ज़्यादा है, 6 महीने करेंगे. Right? And I'll tell you from my experience, okay, as a designer, to learn just research, which is one topic in design, took me a year and a half to get decent at it. Okay. To do interaction design takes you another year and a half. Right. So the question is interesting. So topics bahut hai, right? 80 topics hai. You are saying you want to spend less than 3 months, okay, and you want to learn this. How is it even possible? Think about it. Because koi bhi topic mein, if you want to fight and you want to be the best in the world, because we are talking global careers right now, you're talking like amazing opportunities, you want to get into that space. How is it possible that you will somehow prepare in 3 months and magically be ready for an industry? Now, that is a challenge I want you to think about. So let's go to the next slide. And this is the question I'm going to give to you. No, go back. No. I think we are skipping some slides here. Okay, stay there. Okay, that's fine. Let's go to slide 7. No, slide 10, please. Yeah. So let's actually think through this. Okay, let's think through the alternatives that you have. Okay, and we are going to logically look at this. Okay, you have self-learning, which says you have to explore. You're on your own. You choose what you want to learn, when you want to learn it. It's mostly free. You might take a couple of courses here and there where you're paying micro payments. But what are the advantages and disadvantages? Okay. At an advantage level, okay, you're talking, you have the freedom to explore what you want to explore when you want to explore it. Okay. But at a disadvantage level, the problem is the chances of your success is 30-70. So you're 30% likely to succeed, 70%. It's like traveling without a map and expecting that I will magically reach my destination. Okay. You might, but you will probably have to stop in a lot of places, ask a lot of people and get there. So it's going to be a lot more slower trial and failure and experimentation approach. But that's how you would do that. But even when you get to the end, the question is, will you be able to execute at work? Okay. And that is the question that I would say is questionable. I'm not sure whether you will have the ability to execute at work. Okay. But Is this method good or bad? Right? I would argue it is good. It is still good. Right? I would say if you have the time and the inclination, every student should spend at least 2 hours a day reading and understanding what's going on. Right? Every student, there is a huge component of self-learning that you need to do, but self-learning cannot be the only thing that you're doing. Okay, so you need to be, if you're a student, you're doing MDiz, and this is an interesting thing. We did this research, I think about 3 or 4 years ago, to understand how people's careers grow over a period of their time. Okay, and we found there were two kinds of learners. Okay, the first kinds of people were people who had degrees. Okay, these were structured learners. Okay, then you had the second kind of people that were exploring and learning on their own. Okay, turns out the people that succeeded long term in their career were people who learnt on their own. Right? The people who got degrees actually stagnated in early on. So what was interesting, people who got degrees were able to get their job faster, easier, and were able to get into a kind of a system better. Okay. But they stagnated a lot more, and they were the ones that were complaining more about nobody understands design. Whereas the self-learners knew that I may be wrong. They were figuring out wherever they could find the knowledge, they were figuring it out, and they're bringing that knowledge in. They were absorbing it, they were thinking about it, and they were constantly learning. So the self-learners turned out to have a longer and stronger career. Okay, so self-learning is absolutely a critical skill you need to have. Wherever you're learning, that is one skill that you need to have. However, that cannot be the only one. Now let's look at boot camps. Okay. Now, when you look at boot camps, you're saying 6 months. Okay. And you're saying 80 topics, right? Again, most boot camps will not break it by topics. They'll just give you it's about 120 different topics, which will try to cover the 80 tasks that you will be given. Okay. So when you get those 120 odd topics, again, 6 mahina hai, right? And you probably meet 2 or 3 times a week for 1 hour. Okay. So you have 4 hours, 4 weeks. So 12 classes times 6. Okay. So you probably have at best, about 80 or 90 hours of instruction. Okay. And you have to cover 120 topics. Okay. So the key question that I will ask is, it's not in the ability of the teacher to teach. If you ask me to teach you all of UX in 2 days, I can do that. The question that I will ask you is, what is your ability to absorb? Okay. You still, want to eat, sleep, rest, or do all of that stuff. You will still, maybe at best, if you tried your best, it will be 12 to 16 hours. That's how much you can give me. Okay. 120 topics, 70 to 80 hours of classes. How much can you absorb and how much can you execute? Right. That is the point. So a lot of people look at the syllabus and say, "Ha, ye sab sikha denge mere ko." But the question is not that they will teach you. What can you learn? Okay. So the core thing that you see here, the advantage is you get exposure to a lot of topics in boot camps. The negative aspect of it is you are limited by the amount of time you have. Okay. And therefore, at the end of the day, how quickly can you implement it into your workspace is the question. Okay. And that is what you need to think about it. So if you want to, how do you do it? If you want to learn mechanics like Figma, Adobe, tools, okay, this is a great way to learn because it's a very clean, focused way. You kind of learn the tools, all the features and all that, you're done, ready to go, right? But if you want to learn concepts, it's harder because the concept you have to understand, you have to think about it, you have to practice it, and you have to execute it. So you need time to do that. Okay, so that is one thing you need to think about. And then the challenge is, don't do it if you want an immediate job. Don't do it because now you will have a lot of keywords in your mind, but really, how do you execute when you go into an interview? This is where you struggle with it. Okay, now when you come into a degree, same problem. It's 1 to 2 years, it's 4 to 20 lakhs. And again, this is interesting. If you look at degree curriculums, this is one of the things I do. I look at the degree curriculums, I look at the bootcamp curriculums, I look at, whatever the curriculums are. And turns out there's just 1 or 2 master documents that everybody copies. Okay. Now, the irony of that is it is not about the topics, it's about who is teaching you. Okay, that is where you see a huge difference. And again, 4 lakhs and 20 lakhs. Again, I'm not saying 20 lakhs means suddenly you will have the most amazing teacher. That's not also true. But there's a huge variation in the types of teaching that happens. There's a huge variation in the type of concepts and the practice that you get out of it. Okay, so when you look at the pros, one of the best advantages of a degree, and I'm a huge proponent of the degree because I kind of got into the degree program myself and I did this, it is a huge breadth of topics. Right? You get to sit down with people from other disciplines, understand how they're doing, sit down with economists, sit down with business guys, sit down with computer science guys, sit down with, materials engineering, all kinds of people, right? And you're understanding how all these disciplines work together. So that's great. You have dedicated amount of time that you have available to think about that specific concept. And you have group of peers who are also dedicated to that degree. Okay. So you get the environment and you get the opportunity. But the point is, it is very theory heavy degrees, right? So when you look at it, you will still struggle. Even for me, when I got into my first job, I still struggled. What did I learn and how do I implement it? Okay. You will still struggle with the implementation, but once you understand the implementation and you get past it, it's pretty fast. Okay. Your career moves. And again, that is assuming that you have the humility to say, I am still learning every day. Okay. So the question is, when should you do it? You should do it when you have the time and the financial ability. I will put one more requirement for that. Okay. The requirement is, this is something that I learned when I was sitting in the US. Most of my peers, all of us Indians, we generally do study, 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 and then we go get a job. Okay. Most of the Americans that I was studying with, they would actually study, do their bachelor's, go work for a year or two, then come back and decide they're going to do a master's. Okay. So what would happen is I found that my American peers were a lot more mature. They understood. If I was a fresher, both of us came with the same degree. The American guy had an advantage because they understood how the work environment worked and how everything played out, and they were much more mature in how and professional in how they approached their work. Okay. I struggled. So for me, I generally say if you want to get a master's degree, for by all means, but try to work for at least a year before that so you get that understanding of what a work environment is before you do a master's degree so that you will then be able to get a lot more value out of it. Okay. Now, if you want to do it fine all through, that's also fine. But that 1 year of experience gives a huge advantage to the way you think and your maturity towards your profession. Okay. Everybody clear with this, guys? Type in yes. All right. Now let's go on to the next slide. Okay. So the problem still remains. You guys are saying that, within 3 to 6 months, I want to learn UX. I want a job pretty fast. Okay. And I am saying UX is a vast topic. Okay. So कैसे करेंगे? Right? So the question that I have for you is, have you guys ever faced a situation where you didn't have time, but you had to succeed in a task? Have you ever faced a situation like that? Raise your hand and let me know. Yeah, go ahead, Achyut.
So, yes, sir. I mean, once I started working like quite a few times, especially if it's a loan designer, there is a
Mhm.
requirement from the client, and the timelines are very tight, and you have
Huh,
to figure out. And when you deliver, you have to deliver at the quality that is expected.
huh.
So it's a lot of running here and there, trying to get help from peers. I have been lucky because here I'm part of the community where I could get some help and still push reasonably well. But
Okay. So
that
that
is
is
not,
interesting. So one of your strategies is rely on your peers. Talk to your
yeah,
friends.
yeah.
Awesome. So let's keep this strategy in our mind. Talk to your friends. Are there anything else that you guys have done in your, and I guarantee you, each one of you has faced this problem and each one of you has succeeded. You just are not able to think about it. So think a little bit deeply. Have you ever been in a situation where you did not have time and you had to succeed, either as a student or as a professional? Okay, let me ask you a question. How many people have prepared in the last 1 week before the exam? How many people do that? रचना is my friend, उसको डर नहीं है. Awesome. और कौन है? अजय, देवाशीष, एकता. मैं बता रहा हूं, all of us have done this in our life, including me. How did we succeed? Like, this is the interesting thing. We will start 1 week before. Somehow magically हम लोग पास हो जाएंगे. पास नहीं होंगे जिसने हमको हेल्प किया था. We will get better marks than that person. Right? How many of you had that situation where you were better than the guy who helped you? You got better marks than the person that helped you. So how did this happen? What did you do in that 1 week? जिसमें आपको इतना सारा, you were able to ace the exam. What did you guys do? Ajay, what did you do?
I used to focus on the main topics which are important and
But
work
how do you know
perfectly
which
on it.
topics are important?
My peer used to help me, like, what are the main topics to.
Diego, you made your friends do the analysis. That's awesome. I like your attitude. Good job. Okay. So you had somebody analyze the last 10 years of question papers. है ना? Then you said, which are the questions that you need to understand? Okay. And then you say, okay, I have only 8 hours. This is the question I need to figure out and get good at it. Okay. Awesome. Sai, what did you do? Okay, Sai is still playing. Afreen, do you want to share what you did? I think Afreen needs to have. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I usually connect with my friends and ask with them what to do and how to do it. So I gather their thoughts and their thought process and mingle with mine. So it will come with something.
Interesting. So what you did was you didn't just rely on what your friends were saying, you also did some reading on your own.
Obviously.
Okay. And then you brought it together. Okay. Awesome. Now, how many of you have done study groups? We'll do study groups. So you do this chapter, I'll do this chapter, somebody else will do that chapter, and then in the end, we will explain each other what we learned. Right? So that is exactly the game you guys need to play. That's what I say is like, आप exams के लिए करते, you learn this in your exam, but you don't do this for your profession. That is exactly the thing you guys need to do. That is the game we need to play. Okay. And I promise you that you'll not be perfect, right? When you get your job or when you're ready, you will not be perfect, but you'll know enough to get your first break, right? And you'll know deep enough, right? So it's not about knowing 100 topics just at the skin deep level. You know one topic and you know it very, very well. You will at least get 100% of the marks for the one task that you are being given to do. Okay, rather than get like 10% for 100 tasks. You understand the difference? So the approach is go deep, go focus and execute. That is the game. So thank you guys. I'm going to get on to the next slide. So this is what we did. Okay. So as students, go back to the previous slide, please, Rajiv. As students, what we did was we passed by, okay, so you took your friend's help, you broke the topics, you went in a very strategic manner, and you did whatever you knew it really well. Okay. And the rest of the stuff you ignored. If you have time, you go to the next topic. If you have time, you go to the next topic. That was the game you played. And that is exactly the game you need to play if you want to get into UX within a short period of time. Okay. Let's go on to the next slide. Okay. So this is what is the concept of minimum theory, maximum outcome. Okay. You basically understand what are the non-negotiables from the industry perspective. And you look at how you're going to prepare for those things. Okay. And today is all about that. I'm going to go very deep into this topic, into the non-negotiables of what you need to do and how do you systematically approach each of these topics. Okay. Let's go on to the next slide. Okay. So here are 80 different topics or 80 different tasks that companies will give you that you are expected to achieve. Okay. Out of these 80 different tasks that you will be given, there are 40 tasks that are high important, that are non-negotiable. Every company says, if you can't do these 40 tasks, I'm not going to hire you. Okay. The other 40 are good to have. Okay. And understand that if you get into that space, you are working over a period of 2 to 3 years to get good at it, but you are getting knowledge slowly. Each topic you do it really, really well, get to the next topic. Do it really well, get to the next topic. And then it will take you a year and a half, but you get good across the board. So Suraj, you have a question, or was it just that you forgot to put your hand up?
So I have a question, if I may ask.
Yes,
So
go ahead.
basically, you just told about, we just heard from many people's like, while we study for 1 month before the exam and all, so we focus on the priorities, we ask our peers and all. So as a newcomer, as I'm not working in this, so I just want to get employed. So I need a short period of time. So how should I prioritize on this topic? Where do I find? So should I ask more peers about it? Like what are areas I should focus on all? So I just had this question, like, how to prioritize to learn the maximum, doing the effort with maximum, but in a short period of time. So, just to maximize our productivity and all.
So by the end of today, you'll have clarity. Kya seekhna hai?
Sure, sir.
Okay. If
Thank
you
you.
don't have clarity, ask me again. I'll make sure you walk away with clarity.
Sure, definitely, sir. Thank you so much.
All right. Cool. Satyam, you have a question? So while Satyam is unmuting himself, Achyut asked, is this for experts? Are these 80 tasks for experts or beginners? I would say these 80 tasks are for experts. If you want to be an expert, you will know how to execute all of these 80. But these 40 that are highlighted are the things you need when you start. These are the non-negotiables when you start. But as you go from then to being experts, you start learning all the other things as well. Okay, go ahead, Satyam.
So my question is, so to be a professional in this field, how much experience that we need to have?
How much experience you need to have?
Yeah.
To get into UX. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, see, this is a very interesting point. Okay. If you don't have experience, you don't get a job. You don't get a job, you won't have experience. Okay. So, as somebody that has hired and built a design studio in 3 different continents, I can tell you one thing. Okay. India is very unique where years of experience have no correlation with the person's ability to do work. No correlation whatsoever, right? So the amount of salary you get again has no correlation with your ability to do work. This is ironic. Like I was so surprised. I mean, I've never worked in India until I set up my company for the first time. And I was so surprised. I would have people who have 10 years of experience, 20 years of experience, kar denge, and you ask them questions, they won't even know the basics of it.
Yes, sir. This is
And you talk to juniors, and then you talk to them and you realize, wow, this guy understands UX better than somebody with 10 years of experience. Okay. So if you look at pretty much like till 2 years ago, everybody would look at the resume and say how many years of experience you have. Okay. But for all those of you that are applying to jobs today, you will realize the kinds of tasks and the kinds of questions you're getting are way more mature. Okay. Interviewers are looking to see whether you understand the concept. They don't necessarily care as much about how many years of experience, right? They're looking to see about your understanding of the concept. So even if you have 0 years of experience, there are ways that you can build that experience. Okay. And I can talk to that on tomorrow. Okay. But in addition to that, the way you talk, the way you communicate, the way you present is also a huge factor in people taking you seriously. Okay. So to maybe give your answer in a short sense, yes, it's a little bit tough for people without experience to get into the field. However, it is not impossible. And it is perfectly doable if you have the right strategy and the right skills in place. Okay. And employers are willing to look at people without experience as long as they have the appropriate skills. Okay. And just to give you a sense, within UX Reactive, that's a company that I founded in India, the Indian division used to get before, like, a year and a half before, we used to get about 500, 600 resumes a month. Okay. Today, we get almost about 1,500 resumes in 2 days. So that is the level, but at the same time, it has also become much more easier to identify people. All you need to do is look at the resumes and look at the portfolios, and you can tell which people know, which people don't know. You can tell that very, very quickly. Okay, and I will talk to that about that tomorrow, and we will get into that a little bit deeper. Okay, all right, let's go on the next slide. So here are 40 tasks you need to be able to execute. Okay, now when you look at these 40 tasks, turns out these 40 tasks can be broken down or grouped into 5 different topics. 5 topics, nothing else. Okay, topic number 1 is how do you critique a product pragmatically? When I say pragmatic, pragmatic is a special word, right? Pragmatic means in a practical environment. When you're in work or at work, how do you do something? Everything is from a work environment perspective, okay? So the kinds of tasks that you would get is, hey, I have this screen. Can you identify problems? And by the way, these are also interview questions, okay? So can you identify the problems on my screen? Or here's my app. Can you tell me what I need to fix? Okay. Or you say, okay, now here's the app. Now, can you convince people to fix something? Okay. Why should I invest 5 hours of engineering to solve problem A versus, creating a new feature B? Okay. Can you convince? Do you have the logical explanation for that? Okay. Can you identify the problems? Can you solve an issue in a design? Okay. These are the kinds of questions that you would get. And all of these come under one skill, which is can you evaluate and critique a product in a reasonable manner, in a logical manner. Okay. And I will deep dive into each one of these topics. Okay. Now let's go on to the next topic. The next topic is how do you use tools smartly? It's not important whether you know Figma or Adobe XD or whatever, because if you look at the resumes, everybody will put 20 different tools on their website, on their resume. I don't care whether you know how to use your mouse in that application and click 5 buttons. I don't care about that. The question is, can you do it smartly? Okay. So here the kinds of tasks that you will get is create visual mockups for me, make modifications to a certain screen, create a prototype for me. Okay. Create wireframes, design widgets, change widgets. Those are the kinds of tasks that you will get. Okay. Now the third topic is ideation and problem solving. Okay. Now this I find is most designers get scared of this because most people say, I don't have the skill, but really no, it is built in. And I will talk a little bit about that. But essentially the kinds of questions that you would get, is there a better way to do this? How can I be unique in the market? Because when you look at design, companies look to you to be unique, to give them an advantage. Okay. The question that you should be answering is, how can you be unique? How can you create a recognition, brand recognition in the market? How do you solve a problem? How many ideas can you come up for a specific problem? These are all the kinds of tasks that designers would get under this group. Okay. Everybody clear with these 3 different groupings? Yes. All right. Let's go on to the next 2. Okay. This one. Now, most of you traditionally would have heard the term interaction design. Now, interaction design is a long process. Time lagta hai seekhne ke liye, right? But there's a small part of interaction design that you need to know on day 1, which is how do you design transactional experiences? Okay. So the kinds of tasks is, I want to create an app that takes X information from the user, does Y, and responds back in a Z manner. Okay. I want to digitize an offline experience. In fact, right now, there's a lot of demand in companies to say digitize an offline experience. Okay, which is, and then, the other part is how do you simplify my app or how do you reduce mistakes? People are making a lot of mistakes or people are not purchasing or people are not, I have errors and people don't know, the people are dropping off from my app. So those are the kinds of problems that you would get. And that is what you're expected to solve as a designer. So if you understand how to design transactional experiences, you know how to do that. You don't have to do the whole of interaction design. Just understanding transaction experience is an excellent start and enough to get you an opportunity. And by the way, I'll tell you this, there are a lot of people in the market that have UX in their resume, Okay. If you just do these 5 topics, you will be better than 90% of those guys in the market. 90%. Right? This is what I call is you learn from your friends and you get better marks than them. That is the game that you're playing here. Okay. Now let's go on to the 5th topic. Okay. This is visual design must-haves. And again, I will deep dive into each one of these and I will make sure that you have no doubts about each of these topics. So the kinds of tasks that you get for visual design is not just making something colors lagao, do that. That's not the point, right? The kinds of problems you get, can you create visual mockups? Can you give me interesting visual ideas? Okay. Or you can say, my design is not working. It's visually looking great, but it's not working. Okay. So, or you creating visual artifacts. Okay. These are all things come under visual design. Okay. And one other task that is not here is create a page that looks like all the other pages. When you work in applications, they might have 100, 200 pages, and you might have multiple designers working on different pages. And generally, you can tell what the quality of the design team is when you look at if one page looks very different from the other page. You can tell this team doesn't know how to work with each other. Okay. So this is where learning to work with the team and creating a consistent visual language across all the whole experience is also a skill that visual designers must have. Okay. All right. Now let's go on to the next slide. Okay. Now there are 2 skills. Now all those 5 skills that I told you before are skills that you need to have for somebody to hire you and appreciate you in their company. Okay. There are 2 skills that you need to have to grow fast. Okay. Nobody will tell you, I want you to have the skills, but you need to have it. It is in your interest to learn this. The first one is how do you pitch your ideas? How do you tell that story in such a way that people really want to make that change? Designers don't have power in an organization. Okay. If an engineer says it's going to take 200 hours to do this, we cannot do this. What do you think the product manager is going to say? Okay, forget the design. Let's do this. So you need to have the ability to pitch. Why am I telling you to do what you're doing? Right? How do I get my client to agree to the logic of what I'm saying? Okay. These are the skills that you need to have. Okay. And this is a very interesting thing. When I went to Harvard, this was an interesting concept. I was surprised. One of the classes that we had to do at Harvard was acting. Can anybody guess why we had to do acting classes? Yeah, go ahead, Anand.
To empathize.
No. The point is, actors are really good at convincing you about what is going on, isn't it? So if you cannot go into a boardroom, you can't do a business call without convincing your stakeholders. How does that work? Right? If nobody is convinced, nobody respects you. And that's the point. That is one of the reasons why you say you have, they would tell us you are smart. You're probably one of the smartest people, in the room. But the challenge is, it doesn't matter if you're smart or not. The challenge is, can you convince the people in that room to do what you want them to do? And that happens when you learn to communicate. And communication, not English skills. Okay. For those of you that are coming from, that are good at Hindi, but may not be that good, communication is not English speaking skills. Communication is convincing people of what you're thinking, convincing them to do that, understanding, helping them see your point of view. That is what is communication. Okay. That's why we all had to do acting classes. Okay. Now, the second thing that you need to do is organizational influence. Okay. Pitch is different, influence is different. Okay. In an organization, you'll have many people. How do you influence different people to get change done? How do you get people to kind of take your advice? How do you build yourself into the decision-making process? So these are skills that you need to build. Okay. And this is what defines how high you will go up. Okay. The previous 5 topics defined whether you will get an opportunity to get the job. Okay. Or to do the job well. These 2 things define how high you will grow in your career in the next 10, 15 years. Okay. Everybody clear with this? Yes. Awesome. Let's go on to the next slide. Now I'm going to deep dive into each of those 5 topics. Okay. And I will tell you and then explain to you exactly what I'm saying and why it is important. The first one is pragmatic critique. Okay. Now, traditionally, let's go on the next slide. Right. So generally, when you are at work and you're given this, what do is you identify the problems on a screen. So it's it happens. Whenever you go for an interview or even when you're doing as part of your work, you get a screen, you look at the screen, you will identify some set of problems, and then you will convince the stakeholders that this is a problem and then, that needs to be fixed. And then, you'll prioritize your design recommendation and you execute. That is what is the assumption. Okay. Let's go on to the next slide. Okay. And what happens in school, colleges, or even any boot camp, what they will do is they'll teach you Jacob Nielsen's 10 heuristics. Okay. How many of you are familiar with the heuristics? This term? Yeah. So, ye heuristics sikha diya. This is fairly common. You will learn these 10 heuristics and say, now apply these heuristics. Guess what? Right. There are almost about 90 odd heuristics. Right. Nielsen's heuristics are only a small percentage of those. Okay, they are the easiest to learn. That's why they are taught those. Okay, but there are almost about 90 odd other heuristics that are there. Okay. Now let's go on to the next slide. But even if you know these 10 heuristics, let's look at this problem. Okay, what is the problem here? Which heuristic is being violated? Okay, so let's go to the next slide. So I've got the answer. So the point is, majority of you will have like there are 5 or 6 heuristics that are being violated at the same time. Okay, so one is consistency and standards. Say this is not a standard way of behavior. So there's consistency and standards. Then the other problem that you would see is flexibility and efficiency of use. Why should somebody cancel 10 times? Okay, but the problem is, which is the root problem? One problem is a cosmetic problem that is just putting a bandage. The other is a root problem. So think about it as if you have a fever, okay, would you want the doctor to understand why you have the fever? Okay, or you have an ingrown nail that is causing an infection in your toe that is giving you a fever, or just give you a paracetamol to reduce your temperature. Which doctor would you like? Right? You want the doctor that understands the root cause to take the problem out comprehensively. That's the same thing from a design perspective, right? Nobody will teach you this. Nobody will tell you what is the root cause. So now when you go to your team, guess what happens? You'll say, there are problems here, there are problems here. Even you don't know how to prioritize them. So guess what happens? You're giving them 100 problems and you're saying, these are all the problems with your screen. What do you think the other guy is going to do? It's like the boy who cried wolf. This person says wolf, 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 wolf. Everybody learns to ignore you because he'll say this person always complains. They never have a solution. Let us ignore this person for the long term. And once you go into the mute button, you're always muted in that team. You will never get credibility on that team. Literally, this happens. Everybody in their career will have that choice. And when they make the wrong choice, people will learn to ignore you. Okay, so let's go on to the next slide. So let's go on to the next slide. So the core challenges that you are not taught in whatever curriculum is you have to hit next a couple of times. We are not able to see everything, Rajiv. So you're not able to find the root cause. Most people are not able to identify it, right? And I guarantee you 90% of the people in the market today, you tell them what is the root cause, they will not be able to tell you, even people with 3 or 4 years of experience, right? If you can do it, you are a rock star, okay? The second one is, how do you prioritize? Instead of saying, here are 100 problems, what are the top 3 problems you need to solve? Don't talk about 100 problems, and then they'll hit mute. Okay, what are the top 3 problems? And how do you communicate in a manner that is professional so they will understand you and respect you? These are the skills you need to learn, which you will not learn in any textbook. You only learn this when you practice it. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Right? So the basics that you need to know, of course, are heuristics. I don't care if you know all 90 or not. That's not important. Even if you take Nielsen's 10 heuristics, okay, know them really well. But what you need to do after that is practice, right? You need to practice. Just keep hitting next, Rajiv. You need to practice how to find the root cause. You need to practice how to prioritize it. You need to practice how to communicate. These are the 3 skills you need. And if you focus on this, you know this topic really well. Guess how long it takes to learn this topic? Just this one topic. 6 weeks. 6 weeks of focus and discipline. You know this. All right? Clear with this topic? Yes? Okay. Let's go on to the next topic. Okay. How to use tools smartly for UX design. Okay. Let's think about this. Okay. Now, let's go to the next slide. So, Rajiv, just keep hitting next as and when you think it's appropriate. Don't wait for me to say next. Okay. So, the second set of tasks here are somebody will ask you create a visual markup, make modifications, create prototypes, and all that stuff. This is a standard task that we expect, right? We all expect that we will get. Okay. But traditionally, what all of us do is we'll say, okay, let's learn the most popular tools. Okay, we'll watch some YouTube tutorials and all that. You see master classes for 18 hours, 20 hours at a time. Okay, on YouTube. You go watch that master class for 18 hours, 20 hours. You learn all the features on that tool. Okay, then you will say, okay, I'm going to create screen layers and I'm going to ship. Practically, what happens when you get into a company? Okay, imagine now I'm only able to see half, Rajiv. Go back. Yeah. Practically, what will happen when you get into a company is you would have created 20, 30 screens. Okay. When you create 20, 30 screens, and somebody will say, okay, can you change the style of this button from green to yellow? Are you going to go into each one of the screens and modify that? So they'll say, can you change the layout of this one screen in this manner? Are you going to go back and do that? So the question is, it's not about using the tool. It's about doing it smartly in such a way that you can scale it up. Okay. So if you make one modification in one place, it automatically reflects in all the appropriate places. So that means you need to plan how you use the tool. So the ability to plan the tool use is what is more important than the tool itself. And again, whether you use Figma or Adobe or some other tool that comes, doesn't matter. The planning ability is always permanent. The tool may change, it's very easy to learn. Okay. And I guarantee you, no matter which tool comes, it will know, if you learn it with the planning skill in mind, you will not take more than a day to learn any new tool that comes. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Now, here's the other one. They'll say, okay, now I want you to design screens for mobile, desktop, and tablet. How do you do it? Are you going to design 3 screens? And then if you have to make a modification one place, you have to make a modification on all the other 2 layouts as well? Not really. There are strategies that you do that. So you need to think about scalability. Okay. Multiple devices, multiple form factors, multiple structures. So you're thinking through those things again in the beginning before you use the tool. So using tools, and again, Bootstrap is a framework. Okay. That's a coding framework. Okay. And if you're using Bootstrap, you're kind of too far along. Design systems is interesting. If you say design systems, again, using design systems is the key challenge. Okay. How do you use design systems? How do you describe the design system? So Rachna, yes, while these are all techniques, knowing them, how to use them practically is what is the game that you need to play here. Okay. So, but yes, how do you use a design system in a pragmatic manner? That's the game you need to learn. Okay. So yes, you can use plugins and stuff like that. They're all available. So let's go on to the next slide. Okay. So the basics when you're learning is you obviously need to know the features of the tool. It should not take you more than a day. Okay. However, what you need to practice is how do you organize your artifacts, right? How do you create a common language that you can work with your team? Even if you do frameworks, okay, you still have to think about a common language. How do you structure it? How do you create for scalability? These are the things you need to practice. And once you get this right, you know your tools. Doesn't matter which tool you use. Fair enough? Cool. Let's go on to the next slide. Okay. This is ideation and problem solving. Now, this is an interesting one because most people usually say, okay, I can't think of ideas. I struggle with it. My standard requirement is you should be coming up with a new idea every 45 seconds. Right? And you should be able to do this exercise for 10 minutes at a stretch. 45 seconds, you have a new idea. Okay. So that means you will have about 15 odd ideas in 10 minutes. That's the gold standard. Okay. Let's go on to the next slide. Okay. So the kind of common tasks are, is there a better way? Is there a different solution? Can you solve this? These are the kinds of common tasks that you would get as part of your design at work. Okay. Let's go to the next slide. So traditionally, most designers, what they will do is they look at their competitors. Okay. Then they'll pick the best features from 5 or 6 competitors, put that together, talk to a bunch of people, everybody somehow agrees, and then you pitch your idea. My question is then, how are you different? Why should you deserve a higher salary if you're just copying features from everybody else? Right? If you're Paytm and you're looking at 10 other banking applications and you're taking features from them, you're not doing anything interesting for Paytm. Isn't it? So the way you need to approach it at work is you need to basically practice your mind. The first thing you need to do is you need to believe it is possible that you can think of ideas. Now, for those of you that drink, I do drink in a social setting, and when I drink, it turns out I'm a genius. Why? I come up with ideas that nobody's ever thought of. How is that possible? Well, when you drink, you're no longer afraid of what the other person is thinking about you. Isn't it? So that is the first thing you need to get past. It's a psychological thing. You need to get past the concept that somebody is judging you. Right? You need to get comfortable. So let's go on to the next slide. Okay. So let's take a simple example of a login. How many different ways can you create login? Okay. Most people think a login is username, password, and then you say user attempts a login, user enters the, username and password, and then user is logged in and can move forward. How many different ways can you do that? It's a very simple login experience. Right? Let's go to the next slide. Turns out just here are 8 ways that are in the wild that people do login. Okay. And when I did a last time audit of login experiences, there are at least about 27, 30 ways in which you can do logins. Unique ways. Okay. Something as simple as login. So the point here is you need to kind of believe that you can do it, and you need to understand the problem you're trying to solve. Okay. Let's go on the next slide. Okay. So the problem that you would have is you struggle with ideas, you think about limited quality of ideas, and you struggle with synthesizing all the ideas that you got and put them together. Okay. What you need to do is you need to practice exactly on this. Okay. You need to learn your basics. Now, every training program, whatever will teach you, there's 6 ups, there's, ideation, trizz, whatever, they'll have their own special terminologies. And then you look into that and then you say, okay, these are all the techniques. Techniques का knowledge रहने से कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता अपने को, right? You have to, number one, build the confidence. You build confidence by doing it in a safe environment. Okay. Then you understand the context. What is the context? Why am I designing that login? And then you try to figure out the metrics, and then you try to come up with ideas around that, right? Then learn to step out of your constraints, and then you converge on the solutions. You might have 10, 20 different ideas, and you learn to converge. So these are skills that you have to practice again. Okay. And again, if you hear me, the common thread that I'm having in here is bina practice ke, you will never get to that end line. Okay. And these practice skills are simple and easy to do. You just have to put in the time, and you need to have the determination, the discipline to do it. That's it. Nothing else. Everybody has the ability. Okay. Let's go on to the next slide. And again, each one of these is 6 weeks. Nothing is more than 6 weeks, by the way. Okay. Well, maybe except for transactional experience, because there's a lot more theory there. But other than transactional experience, everything is 6 weeks. Okay. Now you go into transactional experiences. Okay. let's go into this. Let's think about this. So normally they will say create a interactive app. Okay. Digitize an experience, simplify a process. So this is what it is. So these are the foundations of interaction design. These are the kinds of tasks that you would get. They would say reduce my completion times, reduce user errors or whatever, some kind of metric they will give you. And they will say, help me solve this problem. Okay. Let's go on to the next slide. So traditionally, what you would do is you would basically learn, in your class, you will say there's a text element, there's a radio button, there's a checkbox, vagera, vagera. With theory, you will learn all of that stuff. Then you'll put all that stuff together, and then you will say, let's make it look good. Thoda colors, vagera dal denge, then we'll ship it. Done. Okay, that is what you learn traditionally. Practically, let's look at the problems. Let's go on to the next slide. Imagine this is the problem you've been given. Okay. You work in the French embassy in the United States, okay, and you're creating a form that will help people put their documents online, in which you're taking their date of birth. Okay. Everybody understand this concept? You're taking the date of birth for a French embassy in the United States. Okay. All right. Let's go to the next one. Which of these formats will you use for date of birth? All right. So I'm going to end this poll here. Look at this. So it's evenly statistically, if you look at it, it's like about 24 to 30% difference between A, B, and C. Why? Okay. The reason is, if you're thinking about it, the goal when you're going to the French embassy, it's a government document. You want to be accurate. You don't want mistakes because there will be permanent mistakes. And then you have to spend a lot of time trying to fix it. Okay. So if you hit next, our goal is to reduce errors. If you want to reduce errors, you slow down the people. Okay. You increase the effort a little bit and then you get the answers. You get correct answers. Okay. And you give feedback, immediate feedback. This is the day, this is the week, whatever, right? So that is where solution B and C is a better solution. Okay. And again, this is the way you want to be able to explain in your office. If you cannot explain, you say, I'm going to do B, but you don't know why. Chances are nobody's going to believe you, isn't it? That's why I say communication. Okay. For example, A is simplest from a coding perspective. Remember yesterday I said engineers have to be lazy. So that guy is doing their job by being lazy and they're saying, I'm only going to do A. This person is telling me to code all this new falana demkana stuff. I don't appreciate it. But you have to have a reason, isn't it? So that is the reason when you're looking at reducing errors, you need to go B and C. And nobody will teach you this, by the way, in school or in your boot camp, because that is the one thing that you will have to do at work. Okay. Now let's go to the next one. Okay. If you had to be faster, which design will you use? In this case, you're going to do A or D, isn't it? If you're doing it for an astrology website where you want people to enter their data fast and do all that stuff, you want to do A or D. Okay, because every second you delay or everything you make slightly longer, people might leave your experience and go somewhere else. Okay, so that's why when you look at Google, it's just a simple text box, nothing there. Because you just want to type whatever you want to type and get going. Otherwise, there's so much competition with other search engines. Okay, so that is the way you look at it. So depending on the context, you need to be able to choose A, B, C, or D. And this is the skill that you need to learn when you're doing transactional experiences. How do all of these widgets work? What is my priority? Which widget should I put together? How will the whole experience look like? That is the skill that you need to learn. All right, let's go on to the next slide. Okay, so the problem that you would have is generally if you just go with what you've learned in school or your boot camp or wherever, And when I say school, it's college, right? I mean, I used to a different language, sorry. But the problem that you would have when you launch it is the solution will not work. Because if you did a French embassy thing with solution A, guess what's going to happen? There's going to be a lot more mistakes. There's going to be a lot more customer service calls. And they'll say we designed it wrong because people are making mistakes all over the page. Okay, so that is what it is. So solutions may not work and you won't know why they didn't work if you didn't know this. Okay, the second one is you may struggle to convince your team because if you don't know the logic behind it, your team will not know what to do. And finally, you end up making mistakes, you lose credibility. Ultimately, for a designer, credibility is everything in the design space. If they trust you, you are the boss. If they don't trust you, well, good luck. You're going to be ignored. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. So the thing that you need to know is, of course, you need to know all the basic UI elements. Okay, but you need to practice what these UI elements are. How do you combine them? What are the outcomes? How do you argue for them? How do you define a core metric? How do you design the optimal experience according to that core metric? That's what you learn here. Okay, that is what you need to practice. Okay. And then I think the last one is visual design. Let's go into visual design very, very quickly. I'm not going to spend a lot of time. Let's go to the next slide. So these are the common tasks. And again, most of you are aware of the common tasks. Satyam, I'll get to you towards the end. Is that okay? All right. So let's go on to the next slide. Okay. Traditionally, the biggest problem with visual design is we believe color, if you learn color theory, you know typography, you know Gestalt principles, thus laws ka seekh liya, then you are awesome. You know visual design, okay? And you know the visual trend. So you'll probably have a Pinterest or whatever where you're looking at the latest designs and screens and stuff like that, and you're trying to pull it in. That's what the traditional way of doing things are. Let's go to the next slide. Right? But again, it comes to this problem. Right? If you learned all of that, and finally, when you look at these two designs, which one is a visual designer and which one is a UX designer, which one is a graphic designer? Right? And the knowledge that the UX designer did had nothing to do with graphic design. Right? In fact, if you look at it from a graphic perspective, what the UX designer did seems a little bit weak. Isn't it? But the UX designer did the right one. Right? And for those of you that are attending for the first time, go look at yesterday's video where we did this discussion. Okay. But again, the point is, as a visual designer, when I say visual designer, I interchange it with a UX designer. Okay. Visual and UX are the same in my mind. Now, graphic designer is not UX design. Okay. So when you look at this, the thing that you need to think about is what are the user goals? What are the user intentions? What is the sequence of steps that the user is doing, and how do I lay out my visual elements to help achieve the user's goal and the business's goal? That is what you need to be thinking as a UX designer. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. So if you don't do that, you simply approach it from a graphic design perspective, you have difficulty coming up with ideas. There's something that looks good but doesn't work. And then ultimately, there's a huge mismatch in design standards because every designer will have a disagreement because you don't know what the logic is about why you're doing. And if you're doing according to your feeling, somebody is doing according to their feeling, guess what happens? You have two people fighting on the basis of feelings. Fights always happen for feelings, not for logic. Isn't it? And that's exactly what happens. You will struggle at the workspace. Right? Let's go on to the next one. So, of course, you need to know the basics, right? You need to know your toolkits, whether they are the bootstrap toolkit, whatever, material design. You need to be familiar with this. That is necessary. Okay. However, what you need to practice is you need to practice how to align user goals to your visual design. This is a practice. This is a skill that will come only with time. Okay. You need to get familiar with design toolkits. What are all the toolkits? And then, again, most companies, when they're hiring you or whatever, they don't expect you to come up with new stuff. If you say, listen, I'm using the material design standards, nobody will complain. Okay. You just need to know what those standards are and how to use them. That's good enough to start. Okay. You need to learn to apply the standards appropriately. Simple stuff, but you only get that to practice. I can keep lecturing you left, right, and center for years together. You will never understand. Only when you practice it, do it 10 times, will you truly understand, and that's when you're ready to go. Okay? Everybody clear till now? Type yes. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. Now I'm going to take some questions. Satyam, you have a question?
Yes, sir. When we are going to tell about interactive design, then we may design that according to mindset of people, how they are, how they are just familiar with that design, how they familiar easily with that design. Well, interactive means something like this, or it means
See, okay, so you're asking the question is like when you're designing with the mindset in place where you're thinking how familiar is the other person with a certain style of designing. Is that what you're asking?
yeah.
Okay. See, the point being is it's not, this familiarity is obviously a huge component of it. Okay. And in fact, if you are curious, why does Google give all its code away for free, all its design patterns, right? Why does Apple give out its design pattern? Why does Twitter give out its design pattern? The reason is the more people use it, the more people get familiar with it. And then once you're familiar with it, you go to Twitter, it'll almost feel like you're using something at home. It's your home. Okay. So it's about getting people familiar, but also at the same time, helping people achieve their goals. Interaction design is helping people achieve their goals and helping your business achieve its business goal. You understand the point? So you might do something that is familiar, but let us say it's losing your company $1 million. Is it worth it? Not really. So interaction design is the process of understanding what your customer's goal is, what your business goal is, and then you're creating that experience to achieve both of those goals. Okay, cool. Muzakir, go ahead.
Sir, my question, you have bottled down 80s in the 40 and then to majorly 5. But as you expressed, sometimes you are expected to do a little bit of research also. Where do research come in this?
Good point. Good point. Right. And here's the interesting part of it. Okay. Talk to any designer in the industry, US, Europe, India, wherever. Okay. Talk to any designer. Guess what happens? They will tell you, my company does not do research. That is not, and again, from my perspective, there are two perspectives. I'm going to give two different angles to that. Okay. The company does not want research. So that means, yeah, so the company is bad. They don't care about the users. It's very easy to say that. But then let's stop and think. Okay. What is the body of research that's already available? There is research that is saying tabs don't work. Research says that. Somebody's already researched that, that finding is already there. So just because the designer is not aware of that fact, they want to do research to see whether their screen works or not. It's a waste of time. Why will the company pay you for 6 months of research for data that's already available? Right? So for me, the biggest problem that I find for designers is they tend to overemphasize on research when data is already available for it, right? Which is why for the initial 40 tasks, I did not prioritize research, right? Because my understanding, my assumption is you will understand what data is already available. You will leverage existing data, okay? And once you're leveraging, you build credibility within your organization. Then you say, okay, I want to do research. They will respect you. I'm going to spend 6 weeks to go do some research in some, place. Absolutely. If they respect you, they will approve it. If they don't respect you, they say you're wasting time. So that's why I said, see, first 40 tasks should be all about getting respect within your organization, getting buy-in, moving up in your organization. The next 40 tasks are about doing it right. Does that answer your question, Mazakir? Okay, cool. So go ahead, Achyut.
So my question is kind of, I wanted to ask on behalf of all the beginners, because there was a time when I have received a piece of advice from you and it helped me like tons. It saved my almost career, I feel like. So in the beginning stages, there are both kinds of companies that I have observed until now, sir, where they want just a designer to somehow copy something, do some quick fixes and kind of ship it. And there are other, and they are at times they are ready to pay them like tons and tons of money. And there are other companies where there are like core challenges that are there, but maybe for whatever reason that company is not able to pay much. So at the beginning of the career, could you once again emphasize that point, sir? Because it was of great value for me
Again,
that
मैं सबको ज्ञान बांटता हूँ, मैं I forget मैंने क्या ज्ञान दिया,
so
right? So, yeah.
should we concentrate on too much about money or building skill, or how do we balance between the both? Because there are people who need money also.
See, my thing is you need to understand what your non-negotiable is, right? If you say, listen, I need to survive, I need at least 5 lakhs, 4 lakhs, whatever to survive. Absolutely. You have the right to survive. You need to survive, right? Taking a salary below that does not make sense. Okay. However, if you have the option to select, let's say you say 5 lakhs is my minimum and you have two companies, one company where you'll get to learn, explore, and kind of grow really, really fast, right? I would say focus on who is teaching you, who's in that company that can teach you, right?
Right.
If there's somebody that's super brilliant and you have the luxury of volunteering, in fact, volunteering is a very, very important skill, volunteering with the community, because you don't know how many jobs get filled without a single interview. Just because somebody volunteered, I know this person, I recommend that person. Done. The job is filled even before it is published.
Yes.
Right? So if you have the time, the energy, and the mindset, volunteer. Right? If you can't do that, right, and money is not a factor, then look for the place where you will learn and where you'll be challenged. Right?
Right.
If money is a factor, then obviously you have to make money a criteria, look at that, and then go plan accordingly. There'll always be trade-offs in life, right? You do a trade-off between money and something. Today you might get more money, tomorrow you get stagnated. That's okay. You have to understand there are consequences for every decision.
True.
Right? So be okay with that decision and prioritize accordingly.
Right, sir.
All right, cool. Go ahead, Suraj. And again, this is something we'll talk about tomorrow. So go ahead, Suraj.
Am I audible now?
Yeah.
So my questions were pretty much answered everything. So you answered everything. So there's one line which stuck with me that you just told before. So you just told like, you have to come with ideas every 45 seconds. So I believe, yeah, we have to do good old fashioned hard work and practice to earn that. But is there any discipline that we should follow? Like, how to get on the proper track and all? How should we how should we follow proper discipline and proper use things to get that ideas, because ideas just don't pop up instantly. You have to be disciplined.
And that is why your practice and your mentor makes a huge difference to your career. Okay. So if you find that, it's not that I can't give you solutions here. I am a little bit hesitant. I'll tell you why. Okay. In the past, I've had people, Prasad, you say this. This other mentor says this. This third mentor says this. Okay. So who is right? Because I'm getting confused. Right? The point is not that. The point is they based on the context. See, when you don't know anything, you make a rule. Okay. You will say, like, for example, it's a simple rule. They say, if there is fire, throw water, it will go off. Okay. Then a little bit later, you get a little bit older. If it's electrical fire, don't throw water, put sand. Right? Okay, good. So other than electrical, you can throw water. Good. Then no, wait. If there's oil fire, don't throw water because oil will float. It'll splatter all of that. Don't do that. Okay. Oil and electrical, don't throw water. Okay. Well, guess what? If in the sun, if you throw water, what happens? It gets hotter because it's converting mass, right? It's a different type of fire. So the more you know, the more you realize there are more exceptions. There are more nuanced cases, isn't it? And so that is why if you have different mentors may be giving you examples from different cases. They may not be explaining, is case mein aise karo. They may be giving what is true, but for a certain case. And if you're just starting off and you're listening to everybody and you're saying, okay, that guy is right, but this guy is also right, that guy, you'll get confused, right? Which is why if you want to do the minimum theory, maximum outcome approach, take one mentor. Learn usse, right? Don't distract, right? Then once you get there, then you start looking at the contradictions. Then you start saying, okay, obviously this method works, but in what case will that method work? In what case will that method? That's when you learn. Okay.
This line
But
obviously
initially,
motivates us. Sorry.
yeah, go ahead. But initially, don't try to do polling from 10 different places and see what the best solution is. Because all 10 may be correct based on their knowledge and the context that they're talking about. Okay. So choose one when you're starting off, get really good, and then explore.
Sure.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
Okay, Satyam, can I wait?
Sir.
Can I continue my presentation and then towards the end I'll ask you to speak again? Cool.
We have one question from YouTube.
Okay.
From Sumit Durgapal. So he's saying is most of the time the amount offered is not enough according to the talent that we may have. Why is it like that? And even many times non-talented guys get hired, but not the talented ones.
I mean, there is a saying in the industry that says everybody reaches their level of incompetence and stagnates. Okay. So what that means is if you're looking at vice president of design, okay, 80% of those people who are vice presidents of design may not be competent because they were promoted because they were really good directors. They saw that and they got promoted, but they have new roles, new responsibilities, new ways of thinking. They may not be competent. They will struggle. They will figure it out, right? So the point being is, no matter what level you're in, you'll always see people that are competent and incompetent. Doesn't mean they will remain incompetent all their life. They will also learn, okay? But maybe in that interview, they spoke the right way. They solved the right way. The interviewer had a different equation. You don't know what happened, okay? So the point is not looking at somebody else and becoming upset and angry, right? You are only worried about yourself. You care about your career. Don't worry about what somebody else is doing, what opportunity they got, whether it is fair or unfair or whatever. That is their life. They will figure it out. Okay. Your job is to be the best you can be. Okay. Now, in terms of money, yes, there will be struggles when you're starting off in your career. There will be struggles. Okay. But the point is, what the situation is today will not be there tomorrow. Okay. Your only priority is keep learning, keep going, keep moving. Whatever the market situation is, you cannot control it. Okay. Now, I've also heard a flip side to the example based on what, I've heard flip sides where I've had people get hired at director level positions. Okay. They first got hired as contractors for 6 months. And they said, if you work out, we will make you a director. So even at director level things, they are not at freshers, even at director level roles, they are saying, if you work out, we'll make you permanent and make you a director. Other than that, in 6 months, we will fire you. That's what is happening in the industry because companies are no longer able, not willing, but able to invest in their employees the same way they used to do before the pandemic. Right? And when you especially talk remote work, all the experienced people say, I want to work remotely. Earlier, if you said you want, the fresher comes in, they're being mentored by the experienced people. But today, if the experienced guy is working remotely, who's going to mentor you? Isn't it? So there is a lot of that fact in the mind where companies are saying, okay, we might hire fast, but we'll also hire very fast, fire very fast. So there is that also. So again, my advice to you is don't worry about what's going out for other people. You worry about your career. You get good. At some point, your talent is going to show up and you're going to be recognized. That's the simple fact. Cool. Awesome. Let's keep going with the presentation. Okay. So quick question. So have you learned about the 5 topics you need to learn? And do you understand the problem with traditional learning and what you need to do to practice? Just type in yes if you get that before I go on to the next topic. Awesome. Now let's go on to the next topic. Right? How should you practice? That is the question. Okay. Go back. Somebody says, please repeat. So what were you saying to repeat? So what I
Okay,
was saying was, the
order.
question I was asking was, do you understand the 5 topics you need to learn? Do you understand what you need to practice? And do you understand what you are not learning as part of your classroom and that you need to spend the time to learn? Okay, cool. All right, let's go on to the next slide. So how should you practice? Okay, this is the question. And again, what I would basically want to put to you is, if you want to practice, a lot of people have come together and volunteered and set up this system for you guys. Let's go on to the next slide. Right. The first topic is how to build a audit portfolio. And again, each one of these topics, you can create a portfolio element for it. Okay. So how to build a UX audit portfolio is the first place where you start off with. Let's go to the next slide. And what you have here is a link that's going to be shared to you, where it's all about how do you basically just do this one course. It's all about minimum theory, maximum outcome. And these are just videos. I put about 6-7 hours worth of videos. You get to watch all of these videos. Okay. And then you get to sit down with mentors in a classroom and then get the critique and get the feedback weekly. Every week, there'll be one session and you basically come in, submit your homework, get the feedback, and then you learn and you go back, correct it again, put it out together. By the end of 6 weeks, you should be able to create a very solid knowledge in auditing, and you should have a very solid knowledge about how to communicate it. Okay. So this link will be shared with you guys, and then you can access it and you can basically move from there. Okay. So most of these mentors, again, are all pretty much volunteering and engaging with this. And we've tried to keep the cost as low as possible to make it accessible to the maximum level. Okay. Now let's go back to the presentation, please. And if you want this link, it's going to be shared in the chat. You can access that there. Okay. Okay. Let's go on to the next slide. Okay. So with this, we are done with day 1 and day 2. Okay. Tomorrow is going to be an invite-only thing where we're going to talk about how to prepare your portfolio and get a job or get promoted. Okay. What kind of interview questions you're likely to get. And again, these are things that we have within our community. We are collecting all the interview questions. We will talk about the interview questions and how, and the kind of approach you should be expected to have. It's going to be a more of a small, cozy kind of an environment. Again, my intention is to have the most serious people do it and not, distract with a lot of people within the group. Okay. So again, simple rules, right? You have to do your assignments and your homework. You will get some questions. Make sure you complete them. And again, the key thing is today, today the date, the deadline was 5 p.m. Tomorrow's deadline is 9 a.m. Whoever completes their assignment by 9 a.m. is going to be counted for the invitation. You will get an invitation an hour before via email if you qualify. Okay. All right. And I think that is the end of it. Let's stop the presentation, and I'm happy to take any core questions or thoughts that you have so we can get going from here.
Yes, actually, there's one more question on YouTube by Lingesh B. So the question is, what is the main drawback a designer should prioritize? Like, should they focus on simplifying the process or minimize the errors?
I think they should do both, right? As a designer, see, think about it. As a designer, what you are doing is, you're designing for somebody that you will never see. Okay. So as a designer, you are supposed to think about all possible use cases. And at the same time, you're trying to minimize the errors. And then what was the other part? Minimizing the errors and what?
Simplifying the process.
Yeah. So you should do both, right? So again, you're minimizing the errors as well as simplifying the process. Okay. They're not mutually exclusive, and that's what a designer does. And again, it's like saying, when an architect builds the house, should they do the electrical wiring or the plumbing? It's not an option. You have to do both. Right? So when you're doing design, that's the same way. You have to think about multiple things as you're designing your product. Cool. Any other questions, guys? All right, go ahead, Satyam.
So, to be a professional as a UI UX designer, so we need to pursue a certain degree related to UI UX, or are we qualified in with our experience or our knowledge of?
See, the question is not about degree or no degrees. So I'll tell you the advantage of what a degree gives you. Okay. Now, in India, most degrees, I would say, are just paper, right? I mean, you guys who have all done degrees, you can answer better in terms of like, okay, how much of what you've learned and the quality of your learning and the qualities we teachers, how much has that impacted your career, right? At the end of the day, it is which university is giving. If you're from an IIT, you got that degree brand, somehow it gives you an advantage. So degree helps you open the doors. It helps you get your interviews faster. Okay. But ultimately, when you're in the job, your growth in your career depends on your ability to get stuff done. Okay. So my thought process is always prioritize quality of learning over a degree.
Yes.
Okay. If you're getting good quality learning, that's what you focus on. Because if you're competent, you will be confident. Okay. And I can tell you, like, one of the things that one of the most common descriptions that I see online or, on LinkedIn and all these places, people talk about the imposter syndrome. Why do you have an imposter syndrome? The reason you have an imposter syndrome is you're not confident about what you know. You're not confident. So you're given a problem and you're basically hitting the, left, right, and center to kind of try and figure out. Okay. So Bhavya is cheating the system. I'm going to basically send her over to the waiting room because she's not showing her face. She's just blocked it. Okay. So yeah. So that's what you need to be thinking. Okay. So think about getting expertise. The more you know, the more confident you get, the more better you communicate, the better you are there. Okay. Now, degrees definitely give you exposure. They give you a wide variety. They give you the opportunity to look at wide variety of topics. Okay. But you should be ready to absorb it. If you're going into a degree and you say, listen, I'm going to party for 6 days a week, and then the 7th day, I'm going to somehow learn something magical, it doesn't happen. Degrees or whatever learning is, at the end of the day, it is what you're willing to put into it is what you get out of it. Okay. So my advice right now, if you want to get in your job, degree is optional. Knowledge is mandatory. Ability is mandatory. Okay. Focus on the ability, the degree will come. And if you have a year or 2 years of experience and then you get a degree, you're so much more valuable. Okay. Go ahead, Sukesh.
So I understood how competent we need to be, and this session has been very useful, and to build more respect in the organization. To build more respect, I do need to follow what I've learned here. Anything more I need to do. Let's say I have less respect. I need to build more.
See, I think there's systems, right? You need to learn the storytelling, organizational influence. You need to do those techniques, right? I'll give you one very simple technique, and most people never do this, right? Which is writing minutes of meetings. When you're in a meeting, you take your minutes of meeting, you write it, and within 2 hours of that meeting getting over, you're sending the minutes to everybody. Right? Now, if you've never done it in your organization, you start it, they will blame you. They will say, this guy is basically trying to get us into trouble. But if you're getting into a new job, and again, this is what I mean is the different people will tell you. Some people say, don't do minutes of meeting. Some people say, do, depending on the scenario. Okay. But if you're going into a new job, you maintain the discipline. You sit in a meeting, write the minutes, write it in a clear-cut manner, send it out to everybody. Anytime there's a discussion, open the minutes of meeting and say, okay, yesterday we discussed this. Let's go through this. Guess what happens? You are the respected guy. Initially, people will call you, okay, Sukesh, what did we decide on this day? Sukesh, what did you decide on this? They will start asking you for advice. And slowly, what happens is then people start asking you, what's your advice about this? What's your advice about this? So just writing minutes of meeting, don't even learn design. Just write minutes of meeting. It changes your organizational dynamics. Right? So there are many techniques like this that you need to do. These are discipline, right? And I don't know, when we were in there, these were mandatory things that we had to learn. right? But for whatever reason, they were not prioritized as part of the learning experience today. But I think these are things that you need to do. But again, my advice, and this is something that, Field Marshal Sam Manekshaw says very well. There's a video for him on leadership on YouTube. You should watch it. And one of the things he says is, you get, with practice comes competence. With competence comes confidence, right? When you get confident, you make decisions, right? He says the biggest problem with leaders today is they cannot make decisions because they don't have the confidence. Okay? They don't have confidence because they don't have competence. They don't have competence because they never practiced. See the point?
Yes.
So that is what you need to focus on, right? Competence. If you are competent, you will do it.
Thank you.
And you'll automatically get respect.
Sure. Can you just specify the name of the video? I couldn't.
I can share it. So we usually, after every class, we share out the link to the video, whatever we talk about here. So we will share out that link. Don't worry.
Thank you.
Okay, cool. So go ahead, Rachna.
Sir, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Sir, I have a doubt if I can pursue design as a career along with my coding career. Sir, it's a bit difficult to decide.
See, again, fundamentally, I'll tell you about a little bit of an experience with me, right? Most design studios will have engineering as part of their function. Okay. Now, UX Reactor does not have engineering as part of its functions. We don't have engineering in our company. And I think Rachna is frozen, so I'm not sure if she's cut out or what, but I'm going to give the answer for everybody else, right? And the reason why we don't do engineering is, if you think about it, engineers have to be lazy because they have to optimize. Designers have to be hard workers because they have to think about all possible scenarios while they're designing. It's like you have to think about plumbing, you have to think about electricity, you have to think about airflow, you have to think about fans, everything you have to think about. Okay. So you do not have the luxury of being lazy. Okay. Now, when an engineer is doing design, guess what happens? You are trying to figure out what is the easiest solution for you. Designing for what is easy for you. Okay. There's a problem there. If a designer is doing engineering, the designer will design what they're capable of coding. Okay. So that is why there has to be a church and state separation between the designer and the engineer. The designer's job is to be as rigorous and awesome as possible. The engineer's job is to be as optimized as possible. Both of them have their own jobs, right? That said, you have to choose which side you want to go into. Okay. But that said, is it going to be a negative if you know engineering? Not really. I know engineering. I have done coding, right? And I enjoy coding. But for me, coding is just fun, right? Design is my primary thing. So even if I can't do it, I will design to the best of my ability. And as a competent engineer will do this. I can't do this, but a competent guy will do it, right? So it definitely gives you an advantage because you understand the technical environment in which your solution is going to be put in. However, don't think about doing design and engineering at the same time, because somewhere or the other you will compromise. Okay, cool. So go ahead, Satyam and Sukesh. Have you guys forgotten to put your hands down, or do you have new questions? So Rachna, did I answer your question?
Sir, I have new questions, sir.
Yes, no, thumbs up? No?
So am I audible?
Okay, cool. Go ahead, Satyam.
Sir, is it ethical if we are working on pre-existing design?
Good point. So generally, when you as a designer will go in, but there's a majority of the times you will be working on a pre-existing design. Okay.
Yes, sir.
A minority of the time you will do something from the ground up. Okay. So it requires a different skill set. Okay. If you're looking at pre-existing design, that means you will have data, you will have an understanding of what is working for that design or not. You will have a lot more research that's already available. Okay. You will have the problems much more clearly articulated by your business, because your business will tell you, I'm not getting conversions, I'm having high drop-offs, or I'm having some kind of problem. The business will know. So it's a very clear, this is the problem, this is the design, this is the data I have, and it's much more constrained and a way to kind of execute. Okay. And so that's a really good way of doing it. Now, there'll be a minority of the cases for the lucky few of you that will get the opportunity to work on a brand new product from the ground up, right? It's a completely different skill, okay? Because literally it's like building the aeroplane while you're flying it, okay? So you don't have time, you have to ship it, your company is running out of money, your customers are giving complaints, all kinds of stuff is happening. You will make mistakes. Even an experienced designer like me will make mistakes in those kinds of scenarios, right? So in that case, you are probably doing a lot more multitasking in that kind of an environment. Okay, so it's a different skill set, but again, majority of the time you will be working on existing products, and that is why the number one module that I said was you need to learn how to critique a product. Because if you're working on an existing product, you need to know how to critique, because that is the foundation for it. Cool?
Yes.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Go ahead, Rishika.
Hi, sir. Am I audible?
Yes.
So actually, I'm already pursuing a degree on UI UX. So my question was, should I like look for more other options, or should I just do the degree? Like basically, I'm in the first year now, and the first year is the foundation year. So we have only the minor information about UI UX. The basic will be starting from the second year. So should I look for more things, or should I just wait for the college?
Never wait for the college. That's the reason why people with formal degrees stagnate in their careers. Okay, remember I told you a long time ago, we did this research for people who are self-taught and then people who learned from a college. The people who go into a college assume that whatever the professor is teaching, whatever the textbook is there, okay, that is the gold standard. Usse zyada kuch nahi hai. That's what we all assume. Okay. But reality is, our knowledge is changing, right? Every 6 months, new concepts are coming up. I'll tell you, when this master's program, I was working with this university to get it approved. Okay. When I proposed it, it was cutting edge. Nobody was talking about AI being connected to design teaching. Nobody was talking about it anywhere in the world. Okay. It took me 2 years to get it approved. Now everybody is talking about AI. It took 2 years to get it approved. Think about it. Jab tak approve hua, jab tak launch hua, now a new topic will come in. You understand? So from your perspective, when you're learning in a degree, you constantly have to be thinking, what else am I missing? What else is the latest? How do I learn this? How do I get into that? So you always have to be tinkering. Okay. And again, always, this is one of the biggest mistakes that I did. At least, I've studied both in the US and in India, right? In India, my biggest challenge that I kind of was felt, jab free time milta hai na, we would all be sitting together as groups and just chilling out, right? Like, let's go watch a movie. And there's nothing wrong with watching a movie and all that. But at least spend the minimum amount of time talking about your discipline. Hang out with friends who are talking about it, who are discussing it, right? And I know I know of IIT students, triple IT students, right? All these guys, their problem is they're ready to graduate. They've gotten close to their internships. They don't know what design is. In IITs, think about it. Okay. They don't know what design is. So then 5, 6 friends will come. You do an internship here, you do an internship here, and then we'll come back and we'll teach each other what we learned in internship. Right? Think about that, right? So in an IIT, if things are not that good, what do you think is happening in your organization? Right? So my advice is you have to be on your toes every day, every minute. You want to be, again, it's a choice. We make a choice to be excellent. You know what I mean? And this is also another aspect that I will say as citizens. Okay. If I make a choice not to be excellent, how can I expect excellence from that government servant who's standing next to me, in front of me? Right? How can I expect excellence from somebody else if I'm not giving my best? Right? And that is a simple thing that we all need to think about is every day we are going in, we are doing the best of our ability. Right? So we get good. Doesn't matter. You'll be good at the end of the day.
Thank you, sir.
Cool. Awesome. Go ahead, Meena.
Hello, sir. Am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Actually, already I completed a UI UX course a 6 month back, and I did the internship and some freelance projects. And the thing is, I just got an interview. It's a final call actually, and actually it's a startup company with some low pay. I just talked about this with my seniors, and one of them said that don't go with the low pay, and one of them said that don't lose the opportunity. So, what do you think about it, sir?
So let's actually think about it. Money, I don't even think about money. Okay. I mean, if you have to worry about money, by all means, worry about money. But the way my outlook is, there are three types of companies: type 3, type 2, type 1. Okay. Type 1 companies don't know what design is, don't care what design is. Okay. Avoid this type of company under all circumstances. We will talk about this tomorrow. Okay. But you avoid this company no matter what, because they will never help your career move. Even if they're giving you the best salary in the world, don't go. Okay. Type 2 companies are companies that know what good design is, but they don't know how to get there. Okay. But they are willing to work for it. Okay. They are willing to listen to you. So those are the companies where if you go, at least you'll get to do something. You'll be able to build your body of work. You'll be able to build your portfolio.
Yes,
right?
yes.
You'll be able to do interesting stuff. Okay. Now, type 3 companies are literally the companies that understand design and know how to do it correctly. These kinds of companies pay very, very well. They pay a premium. Okay. But it is extremely tough to get into them.
Okay.
Right. So, even today, right, they will have jobs that are offering 60 lakhs, 70 lakhs right there for somebody with 5-6 years of experience. There's a 60 lakh jobs are said. I've seen them. Right. But to get into that is like a fight. Okay. So what you do, my recommendation is get into type 2 companies, build your portfolio, build your experience, learn how to communicate, do all of those skills, right? So those six skills or the 7 skills that I told you, right? You need to be able to do that in your sleep. I wake you in the middle of the night and say, how would you do this? You should be able to do it.
Okay, sir.
You
Okay.
build that experience and that expertise. Once you get into a type 3 company, you are always in type 3 companies. That's what it is. Right?
Okay, sir. Thank you.
But money is a side effect. You get it?
Yes, sir.
Cool.
Thank you.
Awesome. Go ahead, Neerav. You have a question?
Yeah, so there are like about 4 questions on YouTube right now. First one is from Tanvi Agarwal. Sir, I'm just at the start of my career, inclined towards UX design, but I'm really confused whether to self-learn or to do a proper 4-year degree. As you mentioned, self-learn depends on asking the right questions.
See, self-learning is a risky game. Okay. If you have a job, if Tanvi is not in a rush to get a job, okay, she's doing something, she should definitely self-learn, learn, and kind of get there. Okay. She has the time to do it. Okay. And the beauty of it is when you're self-learning, you have time, you give yourself the time to reflect and learn. Okay. So that's a way. But you say, no, I want to shift. Okay. A 4-year degree, probably not a good idea. Get some other degree, right? And do a master's program. Okay. Because when I look at a 4-year degree, majority of the 4 years are basically going to be spent on the same core topics, right? I would rather have somebody who has, let's say, an economics background. And again, UX is one of those spaces where diversity is highly valued, because you could be designing a product for accounting. You could be designing a product for booking cars, or you could be designing a product for e-commerce. Doesn't matter. So these are different domains. Okay. So in UX, having different domain background is very, very valuable. That's why I said do a bachelor's degree with some interesting economics, psychology, or language, linguistics, whatever. Right? Do something fun and interesting that you're excited about. But then when it comes to your master's, specialize in it. Okay. And my advice also is spend your time learning. Do the practice program. Again, the practice program is designed specifically for situations like this, where you have a specific topic, you learn it, go deep, get really good at it, and then you kind of move along. So those are the kind of opportunities and the skills. And keep reading. There's so many really good articles. Keep reading. Okay, cool. Go ahead, Satyam.
So, by any case, is it possible AI replace us? Because AI have much more data of us as compared to we UI designer as a UI designer.
So you're saying if I have any references for learning AI?
Yeah.
Okay. So my advice, and again, this is a little bit counterintuitive. Okay.
Yeah.
It is not that there's some magical tool that will solve your problem. If there is a magical tool that will solve your problem, that will do your job for you, then you don't need a job. The company will use the tool directly.
Yes, sir.
Correct? So why do they need you if the company can use the tool? Isn't it? What you need to do is you need to have the ability to manage an AI. That is the skill you need. Okay. In order to have the ability to manage the AI, what you need to focus on is you need to have a very strong foundation in your knowledge. Okay. If you don't know stuff and somebody is telling you to do something, what will you know? You know, agar मैं बोलूं 1 plus 1 is 2 and you don't know math, or so 1 plus 1 is 4, you don't know math, what happens? You will assume I'm correct, isn't it?
Yeah.
So there's no way. You have to know math before you can use a calculator, isn't it? Otherwise, you are a tool for the calculator. So you might be replaced by a calculator anyways. So my advice, especially in the AI age, is you need to know what is correct or wrong. You need to know the system, the processes. And then you use the AI to speed up your work. That's the right way to do it. Okay. But pehle foundation, that is non-negotiable. Okay, cool. Awesome. Thank you very much, guys, for staying till now. And then, you'll get the invite tomorrow by 6 p.m., about an hour and a half before the event, if you qualify. And we look forward to seeing you. But then, if you've been here with us so long, thank you and have a lot of fun. And hopefully, this course will help you plan your career and move forward. Okay. And if something good does come up, send me an email. I love to hear from you guys. Okay. Bye.
Thank you, sir.